Thank you for the kind introduction, and thanks for people staying in after lunch. And I hope I don't put you to sleep. As mentioned, my name is Meenakshi Arora, and I'm a professor of environmental engineering at the University of Melbourne. And I like to come back to India whenever possible and contribute and learn from the rich experiences you all have to bring. So I'm going to, and thanks Sanjay for making a very good baseline for my presentation. Lots of points you made, I'm going to touch upon them and perhaps provide some examples from Australia and specifically Melbourne on how we deal with the similar problems there. The scales are different and the issues and behavioral problems are a little bit different, but they still tell the similar kind of story. So just briefly, I'm going to talk a little bit about the traditional water management and the issues, but won't spend too much time on that. Sanjay called it smart water management. I'm going to talk about similar concept, integrated urban water management, which brings in all aspects of water cycle together. Provide a bit of case study of Melbourne, and I'm going to talk specifically about demand management because supply side management has been always the case around the world, but we need to be looking at how we are using it, because if we don't change our demand behavior, any additional supply is not going to go very far. And some key messages. So as I said, the way we manage our current water is we pick up the water from surface water or groundwater, treat it, bring it to the users, be it domestic users or industrial users, use it once, throw it away, get it treated, or sometimes untreated, and throw it back in the environment. So we are not doing any service to the environment, we are polluting it, because even if it's treated wastewater, it still brings in some contaminants with it. And secondly, we are losing all that water just after single use. So we can perhaps do better than that. With the storm water, again, as soon as the rain falls, very, very few houses have rainwater tanks. Majority of it runs through our rooftops, through our streets, straight away collects all the contamination from the catchment and back in the environment. Again, we are losing a good source of water as well as polluting our rivers and streams through that. And the objective of managing our water in the past has been that, yes, we get reliable, safe drinking water, and we keep our wastewater separate. We don't want to cross-contaminate that. And for the stormwater, earlier we take it away from the catchment, less we will have the issue of managing the flooding. So it has worked very well so far, but we are growing, and we are growing at unprecedented rate. And when the population grows, we need more water for people to drink. We need more water to grow food to feed that population. We need more power to again provide energy to that population. So the world freshwater demand is growing, but the supply is not. And this graph actually shows the top line is the global water demand, and the second top line is the Asian water demand. So in Asia, the freshwater supply is not going to stop increasing. And Sanjay very well mentioned that we can't keep going with adding more and more dams. So how do we manage that? And I'll come back to that. Urbanization is another key challenge. We are not only just growing, we are moving more and more into cities for better opportunities, which makes sense. And it's predicted that 70% of the global population is going to live in city by 2050. And countries like Australia, we are already 92% city dwellers. And very few people live in the regions. What that means is, in the cities, any single pervious area we find where water could actually get in to the ground and recharge our groundwater, and also provide base flow to our rivers and streams during summer periods when there is no rain, we are blocking each inch of that open land available. We are covering everything with the bricks and pavements, which means our base flow contribution and recharge is reducing. And at the same time, I don't know if my clicker is going to work. So you see this big peak in the surface runoff. So the green line is showing when you have the forested catchment and you have open spaces available. After the rain, a large amount of rainwater sinks into the ground and you have a small peak and base flows on both ends. In the urbanized areas, we have a very large surface runoff peak, and we have zero base flow, or very, very little base flow available rest of the year. And this peak is not only just changing the hydrological regime of the streams and rivers and flushing some microflora and fauna, but it's also adding all the contamination. So higher the runoff volume, faster it runs and it erodes the soil and carries the contamination. And this is the scenario. The left side pictures are from Melbourne and the right side ones are from Delhi. So we all face similar problems. We have floods at certain time of the year, and either few years later or sometimes even in the same year we are facing drought-like situations. This graph, perhaps there is a lot of information on this. The only thing I want you to pay attention to is that it shows that due to climate change in Australia, whatever scenario you pick up from 2030 to 2070, or the three emission scenarios, like if we are going to increase our greenhouse gas emissions in the future versus if we keep it to the level we are at the moment, in any scenario, even as early as 2030, we are going to reach to 1.5 degree of heating in most of the Australia. And the next picture shows similar kind of trends for India. So the top picture is showing the rainfall. There is going to be some increase in rainfall only certain part of the country, but rest of the country is going to either have lower rainfall or maintains, but the temperature is going to rise in pretty much all of India as well. So what does that mean is we are going to have warmer climate, which means we are going to see more droughts because less rainfall, warmer climate, less infiltration, and whenever it rains, because soils are perched, it's going to take much longer for them to wet again and start producing any surface runoff. So we are facing the issues of flooding on one side and droughts on the other side. And this final picture shows another example from Melbourne. So in Melbourne, we are in a very fortunate situation that we have very large protected catchments. So all the stormwater which runs on those catchments is collected in a network of 10 reservoirs. And those reservoirs, if all full, can provide 4 years of Melbourne's water supply. So they are really large. But during the millennium drought, we went into low rainfall continuously for 13 years. And the line here, the long-term average, is showing that. So we went from almost this green line, 615 gigaliters per annum to almost 300 gigaliters per annum. So the supply almost reduced to half. And that is what we are seeing more and more now. So it's not just heating climate, reducing rainfalls, it's highly variable as well. So all these factors combine, and we have been talking about these things, it means that we are facing much harsher scenario in the future in terms of demand. And this picture here on Delhi side is showing that Ganges runs through 1,300 kilometers, and the stretch of 22 kilometers which runs through Delhi actually brings in 80% of the pollution in the river. So we have to be doing something better than that. And the few stats on the top are showing in a city like Delhi, which is the capital city of the country, only 83% people have piped water supply, which doesn't mean that they have sufficient water coming through as well. We only have intermittent supply available. Sewer network is only connected to 50% of the population, and 21 drains discharge their waste in Delhi region itself in the river. So what does this mean for water management? It's clear that we can't be using traditional ways of managing water. We have been looking at the traditional runoff, project the population, project the water demand, and manage it that way using the linear systems. We need to look at some more adaptive ways to manage our water. The solutions need to be adaptable. They need not to just rely on climate. If it doesn't rain, how we can still keep going, and utilize the diverse portfolio instead of relying on drinking water. So I'm now putting up a overall challenge And the challenge is that we need to provide safe, secure, reliable drinking water to growing cities. And at the same time, we are facing climate change, we are facing urbanization, and reducing supply available to us. So the emerging solution is that we start looking at the whole urban water cycle, and that brings in all those issues we have been talking since morning about central managing something and states managing something else, at what level and what scale it's done. And then one division is looking at just the water supply, and other division is responsible for wastewater, and yet another one for stormwater management and groundwater, and we don't want to talk to each other. But water doesn't know those boundaries, so we need to start thinking about the whole water supply system as one single unit and integrate them and manage them together. And integrated water management can include various or all of the above, all of the below options. So using the alternative water supply. We were talking about flushing the toilet with drinking water. We really don't need that clean water to flush the toilets. So why can't we start looking at what alternate sources are available? So we're talking about showering on the cot. So people had that wisdom. We have just thrown that away. And it was possible. And if we have enough intention and we put the right governance in, we can go back to those more sustainable systems. Using of water efficient appliances goes to the demand management, and I'll talk in a little bit more detail in a moment. Reducing or preserving the natural hydrological regime. So we are dumping all our storm water and altering the stream hydrology. If we can do something to manage that, that will be a big step forward. And distributed decentralized systems instead of centralized systems for all the opportunities. Oh, sorry, I've gone backwards, it seems. So this is very simple line diagram. The top one showing the linear system where we are using the water for once and throwing it away, and the storm water also. We let it go through our catchments, causing wrecks around, flooding as well as polluting our rivers without using that water at all. And the bottom one is actually showing that we can make better use of both of them. So we can recycle our wastewater back for non-potable uses or even potable uses, because many countries around the world do it very successfully. We have all the technology. It's only about governance and management and changing the community expectations. And similarly, stormwater, rainwater harvesting can be done at the household level, and stormwater harvesting can be done at community level, and it can be used for various purposes. And this figure, I'm not going to spend too much time. It shows that for different water sources, the green dots are showing that is their preferred use, and everything else can be met from other uses. And the top line shows that for the potable water supply, the only preferred uses are use in the kitchen, use in the bathroom. Rest everything can be met through other sources. And when we say that, but these schemes are expensive, mainly because we do our cost-benefit analysis only on the dollars or rupees figures. If we look at the water productivity instead, our cost-benefit ratios are going to very quickly change. If we start to look at the health burden avoided, or if we start to look at the stream health, so we need to start bringing in those ecosystem and health values and look at the productivity instead of just the cost-benefit, financial cost-benefit analysis. And this is the Melbourne's response to drought I was just mentioning. During that 13-year drought, our reservoirs fell to 30%, all four of them together. And it was like if it didn't rain for another year, we will be running out of water. So government, of course, in a hash, did put in 2 large infrastructure projects. Started the planning for a large desalination plant and a pipeline to bring in the water from irrigation district. Those things take time, but in the meantime, we had to find other ways. So demand management, and you mentioned about educating the young kids. So the campaign was targeted to young kids. In every school it was taught. Lot of campaigning through billboards and through all sorts of media. And we went from per person demand of 247 liters per day to 149. So we reduced 40% just by demand management even before desalination came through. But now we have the desalination plant. When it was ready, drought broke because demand management reduced our requirements to significant levels. And the desalination plant is a bit of an insurance policy for Melbourne now. But I still wanted to ponder on, is desalination the answer? And Melbourne's example shows that perhaps not. There are better solutions, because desalination, one, is not available to every city. If there is no sea, you can't use it. It only provides additional water. It doesn't solve the issues like contaminating our rivers and streams and flooding our cities. But if we go to integrated urban water management, manage our stormwater, manage our wastewater better, it is available to everyone. And even during the climate change, wastewater is something which every city produces every single day. So that source is available, we just need to start making better use of it. The only, one other challenge with the wastewater recycling is that you can't start doing it in a very dense cities, but if you start doing it with the stormwater harvesting in the denser cities and built in a recycling facility in all the new developments, it can provide a solution to the problems. So the main lessons are that diversification is perhaps the key. We can't just be using drinking water for all the uses, regardless of the quality needed. Reduce the demand. Sanjay mentioned about the leak protection. We are losing half the water, but at the same time, we are also losing half the wastewater. Think about our aquifers. So I don't have time to go into detail, but we lose almost 40% of wastewater as well on the way, which never gets treated. And reuse without the treatment where we can. So grey water reuse is a great example. Rainwater harvesting is another great example. And recycle after the treatment where it's possible too. These are just some relevant publications, and that's all from me. Thank you.